Um, Hello, my name is Marco Rosso, and I'm part of the artists and curatorial collective called this, and I'm also a part-time faculty here at RISD. And first of all, I want to thank Marisa Katz and Daniel Lefcourt for the opportunity to co-curate this symposium, and a huge thanks also to RISD for organizing and providing this forum for this timely discussion. It's great that RISD is stepping into the AI discourse at such a critical moment when these technologies' foundations are being laid. Institutions if they want to be relevant, they need to intervene, have input when things are being built and not after the fact. In this context, it's my pleasure to introduce Jon Rafman, a fascinating and influential artist whose work I have been engaging during the last 15 years. Jon and I are part of a network of artists, colleagues, and platforms deeply immersed in the evolving aesthetics, subcultures, and technologies from the Web 2D digital era. Of course, also their profound implications, sociological implications. Jon Rafman is an artist whose practice interrogates the complexities of the digital age, exploring intersections between technology, memory, and identity. His work profoundly reflects on how digital culture mediates our experience, relationships, and perceptions of reality. And now Rafman's recent works tap the creative potential of machine learning, continuing his practice of applying the latest digital technologies and analyzing their impact to everyday life. And as Jon said, these technologies enable the creation of complex new virtual landscapes by blending the vernacular of video games and pop culture with classical motifs. And as he said, I craft my own modern-day visions of hell and purgatory, reminiscence of Geronimus Bosch. And said that, let's welcome Jon and let's enjoy his purgatory and crazy worlds. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, for the introduction. Thank you for having me. I decided that I'm going to try to give a brief history of my practice and how it parallels something that I think occurred on the internet over the past 14 years, and how I see it reflected in my interests and the type of work I make, and also in the technologies that emerged over that period. And at the end, I'll talk about how AI art, or the AI image generation, video generation, music generation has transformed my practice. And in a way, give a sort of apologia or argument for why I'm so excited by it. As Marco mentioned, after I graduated art school, I was searching for a sort of community that I felt was going to be my French New Wave, the equivalent of some sort of artistic community where we would share languages and respond to each other and create a sense of we were expanding the way in which we can reflect on reality, which is always changing. And I think as an artist, I'm always searching for new languages to communicate. And I found a community of artists that shared this excitement I had for all these new forms of subcultures and ways and vernaculars that were emerging with the advent of Web 2.0. And the way I use technology is really, I try to use technology the same way as your average person, like any kid using YouTube would use it. So it's not so much, I'm not so much interested in the tech or fetishizing the tech itself, but more just tech that's available to everybody. And that's what I saw in this community of artists, which at the time was the age of surf culture. It was the second generation of net artists. And we all shared this excitement of discovering new communities online, and also, for me, virtual exploration was really what was most exciting for my practice. So the main two projects I had at this period were one, 9 Eyes of Google Street View, and another which I'll show after, Kool-Aid Man and Second Life. And in both, I saw in these virtual worlds something that reflected the nature of our modern world, and they really crystallized certain tensions that I thought were rich mines of material for me. So with Google Street View, I would just spend hours and hours and hours on these long marathon runs exploring the Earth through the greatest, archival photography project of all time, and in search of a sort of romantic quest. So I framed it purposefully and somewhat ironically as if I were a 19th century romantic, in search of sublime moments or beauty, but rather than in nature, it was all mediated through the screen. And it poses the question whether the sublime experience can still be had through this hyper-mediated space of the screen world. And I'll get to whether I felt like I actually achieved that sublime moment. But I feel like what was so exciting about this imagery was the way in which it was photographed, where you had this incredible tension between the anonymous camera of this that was on top of a Google car that was just driving for a sheer instrumental reason of capturing the world, so that Google, in its sort of imperial way, could control information, even though it was a little different than the 1984 model where, that was Big Brother watching everybody. Here there's a sense in which, even though it's all owned by one corporation, we can all spy on each other on some level. So, but even in the actual, and this is a recurring theme, where you can, even within the actual image itself, there are things that reveal, at first it seems, at this period, Google's motto was, do no evil. Don't be evil, thank you. And so, like, they did, it was during this period, especially the early Silicon Valley era, there was this utopianism, and you could even it was even reflected in new media art, where there was a sense of like the world, that the internet was allowing for this new incredible democratization of media, where everybody now could have a platform, and there was an explosion of content, and now we had all these amazing new ways to communicate. So on one level, it felt like it was bringing us closer together, but as I will explore in this talk, I experienced in the past decade that it both brings us together and drives us farther and farther apart, creates more and more polarization. But during this era, we were all swept up in this sort of excitement at all these potential new languages, like I mentioned, and for me, virtual worlds to explore. But even in these images, you can see that within the interface, in the corner, report a problem. It poses the question, who are you reporting it to? When was this picture even taken? What does that do? If you see a dead person or a person sick lying in the road, in the past, you were confronted with the moral dilemma, maybe, of like what to do in that situation. But now we've reached this point of we're so alienated from the actual thing we're passing through the screen that I think it's an interesting reflection. The other thing, which I was mentioning, was this tension between the automatic camera that's just capturing without any, moral position, without any aesthetic eye, and the human gaze, which sees meaning, which sees beauty. And for me, that sort of indifferent automatic eye of the Google camera, which is just capturing these things randomly, and the human gaze, which sees meaning, sees beauty, is forced to take ethical stances that tension to me was really pregnant with meaning. So I'm going to try to be fast because there's a lot to cover. So the sister project to this was Kool-Aid Man and Second Life. So in a way, if Google Street View was like the great documentary project that was reflecting the world in a quote-unquote unbiased way, because this camera had no, other than the corporation, which was just trying to gather data, to control the data, it was not taking any sort of moral stance, and that gave it a sense of immediacy that I felt was the case for early street photography that I felt had been lost, and that returned with the Google Street View imagery. With Second Life, Kool-Aid Man and Second Life, I saw that as the world of desire, the world of the inner world that was able to be manifest in this virtual. I don't know how many people know what Second Life is, but what I love about Second Life is it's user-generated. So in a way, for me, it was like a 3D reflection of the anarchic psyche of the internet, which is the old internet, which is the internet that I was inspired by, and what, in a way, made me feel like that era was like my Paris of the 20s, where I was this flaneur wandering these virtual streets, and just the Kool-Aid Man being my avatar representative of the flaneur was observing all these sometimes extreme marginal subcultures. And in these subcultures, I found that even the most, a subculture, a hyper niche subculture within furry subculture to me, of, for example, a fetish of furries that like eating each other called vorophilia. Even within these hyper niche fetish cultures, you can see metaphors or truths about the world that are even more transparent and clear than in mainstream culture. And I feel like that's why I like another reason why I like Second Life is that it points to its own artifice. So in a way, it is arguably more honest in the sort of Brechtian sense that it is pointing at its own. There's no illusionary nature to it because it's so wonky, and I find that this Second Life, which is actually now I think the oldest 3D virtual world, it still has a diehard community. So every now and then I return to it, and it's just a constant source of inspiration. And I feel like that project and those Nine Eyes of Google Street View project are representative of that era of like just the shared excitement I felt with all these net artists of like what we can do with all these new virtual worlds, languages, etc. Now moving on. Actually, one thing to reflect on.
To me, the great hope is little 8mm video recorders and stuff around. Some just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder. And for once, the so-called professionalism about movies will be destroyed forever, and it will be remarkable.
To me, I felt like that's what I was feeling at the time, where even, the art I was seeing in the galleries the art I was seeing in galleries was never as exciting as that video made by that fat girl in Ohio. So now moving on. I'll just show a little video now. Sorry, I haven't slept for more than 2 hours in the past 72 hours, so bear with me. Can we jack? I want to blast this.
As you look at the screen, it is possible to believe you are gazing into eternity. You see the things that were inside you. This is the womb, the original site of the anatomy. imagination. You do not move your eyes from the screen. You have become invisible. The images captivate you, but still you drift off. You can still see every detail clearly, but can't grasp the meaning. Whenever a shift in your spiritual life occurs, fragments such as these surface. You won't be distracted, either by the reflection of yourself or by the last glimpse of the things now being lost forever. As you look at the screen, it is possible to believe you are gazing into eternity. For a moment it all interlocks, but then a new pattern of ordered disorder emerges in front of you, always the one before the last. You are again in a dream, walking endlessly winding paths. And you can't find your way out of the maze you are convinced has been created solely for you.
That was a music video that I made for an artist called 106 Point Never. And to me, this is, in this simplistic history I'm telling, was the next phase, which was, if the first was more of the romantic utopianism and, excitement, the potential and of the democratization brought about by the internet, I also witnessed, over a pretty short period of time, another force emerged, which is like in the underbellies, the far underbelly corners of the internet, and this was in a way a continuation of my virtual exploration, but rather than exploring specific virtual worlds with contiguous space, it was more exploring like these quote unquote, not so much the dark web, but the deep seedy underbelly, which I think was most represented by 4chan, and I still do believe that all culture runs downstream from 4chan. But at the time, 4chan wasn't what we associate it with now. I mean, now it's pretty much a shell of its former self. But back then, it was more associated with Anonymous and the sort of it was more like the old hacker idea. There was still a libertarianism, but it wasn't connected so much to associations with the alt-right and incel culture. But, in retrospect, maybe you had good intentions, but in the, history doesn't always, artists, the positions they took in the past, change meaning as time goes on. But what I most liked about that video was that I premiered it on 4chan, and I think it was one of the first times they had seen the sort of language of shitposting that reflected in a somewhat, not mainstream, but a musical subculture that was using their specific way of communicating in language. And what it also reveals at the time is my obsession with the anti-hero or the troll character. As you saw earlier, the messy keyboards are for me like one of my favorite images, because to me that they're kind of that liminal space or the barrier, the entrance into the virtual, but at the same time they're filled with this, physicality and grotesque abjectness, which I'm super attracted to. And in a way, a lot of this period is an exploration of the abject and the internet abject, and also in a way, just go back to the sublime. The closest thing I would say I found to the sublime is that feeling of the infinite, not the infinite expanse of nature, but the sense of like discovery of worlds within worlds within worlds, and that feeling that you don't actually know what's going on, that there are there are cultures within cultures within cultures, and whenever I would find one, that was sort of the closest feeling I ever had to that sense of amazement and awe. But so this period I feel like was, in a way, I feel like that this character of the troll, to me, became a real focus in my work, and I felt like the consciousness of the troll was one that was archetypical of our times. And in an age where we have more and more data, but it's less and less meaning, there is the question of whether one can create a coherent identity and make a coherent, narrative that explains the world is questionable. And that is sort of the consciousness I am. It's the most, I say, in a way, acute version of this consciousness that I'm exploring, where it was a sort of nihilism that emerged out of our times and was found its truest form in this culture that I became obsessed with. But at the same time, it's not all just negative, because all the language we're using, from memes to, just the way in which a lot of internet language emerged was from this dark, complete anarchic anonymous world of 4chan. So, there's a sense in which you have to pass through darkness to reach the light. And I think this, if I were to again compare it to the Romantics, this is, it began with this, the French Revolution and this real hope in, all the ideals of the French Revolution, and then we know what ended up happening. But at the same time, you know, what emerged in late Romanticism or decadence was this actual love for the irrational or the grotesque, and like the Baudelarian obsession with the, you know, the streets of Paris at night, and there was still a sense of being able to get lost in the medieval streets of the internet at the time, and that's what I was exploring and creating these montage videos using what I discovered on these exploratory quests into the dark corners. This is a newer project, but it's related in that it's using shitpost and animating them to create this uncanny. So, I think, how much time do I have? Okay, I have to really speed up. Maybe before I play this, I guess to finish this story, what I found after this was a sense of, like, again, to compare it to the turn of the century France, a sort of Haussmannization of the internet that occurred, where before surfing the net was this exciting thing where you would share websites and it wasn't all channeled through. People actually went to websites. But then what I witnessed over time was everything became filtered through basically the social media networks, and in a way it was homogenized everything even more by the only way that people were experiencing the internet were through these giant boulevards. So in a way, with the Haussmannization of Paris, which destroyed the old medieval cities, which you can get lost in, and what the Arcades project is about, Walter Benjamin's Arcades project. In a way, I've witnessed the same thing happen to the internet, where all these places where I used to be able to get lost in sort of were all pulverized to make way for these huge feeds, you know, the Instagram feed, the Twitter feed, the Facebook feed. And I think that one of the main theses that I'm constantly searching in my work is, to what extent do we influence the world versus to what extent it has influence over the construction of us and our consciousness. So in a way, a lot of people see technology as this deterministic thing which is transforming us, and as if it's outside of us. But I actually think somewhat of the reverse, or at least a more dialectical way, where, you know, the technologies that do succeed, and I won't be able to get into it because I also have, you know, a whole series of work taking place in virtual reality. But I feel like the technologies do succeed just like the way photography emerged and became reflective of our, you know, reality and the way we perceive things. I feel like the AI, which is the last thing I'll talk about, and how AI has influenced my practice, is representative of a world in which, you know, actual consensus reality is collapsing, and you and your neighbor could have a literally completely opposed experience of the world and perception of reality. And whether AI, I feel like AI is reflecting that and accelerating it, but it's already been the case for many, many years, and it's just, in a way, reaching its logical conclusion. And that's what I see in a lot of the technology that I'm exploring. And I feel like one should use the tools that are alienating us from ourselves to reflect on that, the nature of that alienation. Well, should I do one last thing?
And was greeted by a text in big all caps letters. Underneath the text was a pixelated image of a dapper middle-aged man with slick back hair in a double-breasted blazer.
So this is all made with AI.
Since the last crash, I'm down big. Very, very big. I'm too scared to check my crypto wallet. Why did I put all my money in altcoins? I haven't told my wife that we won't be able to meet next month's mortgage yet. If I tell her, I'm scared she'll pack up and leave me. My bud recommended I see this hypnotist. Said he'll get me right back on track and forwarded me a link to his Angel Fire site. I clicked and was greeted by a text in big all caps letters. Underneath the text was a pixelated image of a dapper middle-aged man with slick back hair in a double-breasted blazer lighting a fat Cuban cigar. Stop being a pathetic fucking worm. Alright, I will hypnotize you to have what it takes to play in the big leagues, pal. None of this pussy-ass Bitcoin, Ethereum shit. Alright, cold, hard shit coins. I'll teach you how to grab the crypto market by the balls, just like in the old days. My patented technique only requires a willing participant who's ready to let me take control of their life through the ancient power of hypnosis. You will be fucking pussy and taking names in no time, bub. Stick with me. Email Benny-Benjamins@AOL.com right now to order my world-famous 7 Steps to Getting Rich Hypnosis DVD. Benny-Benjamins@AOL.com 7 Steps to Getting Rich Hypnosis DVD. Naturally, I wrote Benny Benjamins an email right away asking for his nearest appointment. I drove over to his hypno lab located in a suburban office park near the airport the next day. I recall entering the building, but that's about it. I must still be under hypnosis, because my next memory is finding myself inside a 7-Eleven in the year 2035. I was exhausted, and late for my shift at the local crypto mine. I needed a boost, so I grabbed a canister of G Fuel. The android working at the counter said they only accepted Dogecoin, so I pulled out my iPhone 25, drew a cute little stick man in less than 5 seconds on the touch screen, and then sold it as an NFT. I made 6 Dogecoin from the sale, which was about $6 million in old world money. I went to buy the drink, only to find out that from the time I shut my phone to the time I talked to the robot cashier, Dogecoin had dropped in value to only 6 old world dollars per coin. And now I owed at least 6 million Dogecoin to the robot for the gamer fuel. I left 7-Eleven frustrated and drove off in my old beater of a Tesla. Benny Benjamin keeps testing me. Like I won't end it all. I'm not one of your strongest soldiers, bro.
Hello. So I have many questions. I don't know. You will have time, but first of all, if you want to check out his AI videos, I mean the counterfeit post, series of videos that were being screened before. If you want to check them from your laptop, you can go to this.art. They are published there. And in addition, there is a prompt manifesto that is very provocative, and maybe, I mean, we can talk about that. And it has also been released on this.art. But one thing that I wanted to mention is, like, in 2014, during the Berlin Biennial, we were having conversations and so on, and there was obviously a very strong common point, and it was about the collapse of the real. I'm going to read just this small fragment of the curatorial statement from the 2016 Berlin Biennial. Welcome to the post-contemporary. The future feels like the past, familiar, predictable, immutable, living the present with the uncertainties of the future. Is Donald Trump going to be president? Is wet poisonous? Is Iraq a country? Is France a democracy? Do I like Shakira? Am I suffering from depression? Are we at war? It is the present that is unknowable, unpredictable, and incomprehensible, forged by a persistent commitment to a set of fictions. And for that, for that biennial, you produce a VR project that basically was talking about all these subjects, kind of the collapse of the real, definitely. It was called Pariser Platz, and you would wear the VR glasses, and the view of Pariser Platz in Berlin would collapse in itself.
That quote is very, is this working? Okay, good. Appropriate for a lot of the work that, at least what I was saying earlier, what I'm trying to express about this sort of fragmentation and ahistorical times we live in, where it's harder and harder to construct our own identities. And I think, this is not new. It was happening since the advent of modernity. Even in the past, you might have been, during World War I, you can go to the front, and fight in the trenches, and then take the train back, and then be at the cabaret. And there's this sense. Nowadays, you can be scrolling through Instagram, and there's a war, foreign wars going on. Somebody's posting about their trip to Cabo. You fall in love with the afternoon. You see somebody's cat pictures. There is this, this sort of fragmentation is hyper accelerated in the way in which, the extreme nature into which reality is commodified. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers it.
But what I'm trying to bring is that, now with AI, it seems that, we have increased that sensation, and that's, if we were talking in 2014, almost 10 years later, it has grown exponentially. That feeling, what was his name? Adam Curtis, was talking about in 2014 with his documentary Bitter Lake, but now it's like we are beyond that.
Back then I showed a work, like you said, virtual reality, and virtual reality, and really, the screen life in general, being immersed in a video game. If your emotional life, is all mediated through a screen, or let's say you fall in love in Second Life, or all your best friends are part of some guild in World of Warcraft, what makes that less real than the physical world? If anything, there's the emotional richness of that reality is even more important. So I saw in VR this reflection of the collapse and blurring of the lines between the virtual and the real. And now the whole idea of post-truth world, AI is the obvious expression of that, where an image now, it's literally impossible to know if it's real or not. And that sort of sense of just being, everybody being, and this was something I didn't get to, but with the increased polarization that occurred over the past many years, in part because the tech companies benefit from, echo chambers and being triggered because that drives engagement. We witnessed this extreme version of the collapse of a consensus reality where, and like I said, AI is the reason partly why I'm interested in AI is because I feel it is a tool in which one can reflect on that.
And going to your manifesto about prompting, you are one of the few artists that you are, with a provocative stand, you are really embracing fully the capabilities of AI and using it as a tool. I mean, we had the previous panel, I mean, it was very reflective on it, and you are also reflective, but at the same time, you are like bringing it, in a certain way, you are bringing it on. And I don't know if you, I mean, I have that phrase, that poetic phrase from that, I mean, if I read it, no one will understand me, but if you read it,
okay. I wouldn't call it a manifesto, it's more of like on some levels I do believe that there will be a future in which, you know, the ability to manipulate the idea through various prompts will be many people's practice, you know, both artistic and just in general in the world. And that's basically mine right now, because all my work, from a video game I'm making to my recent music videos to, you know, new videos that are, this is what I wrote. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This ancient, we all know where that comes from, the New Testament. There's the phrase abracadabra, or abracadabra, colloquially known as abracadabra, translates I create like the Word. And the magic of abracadabra lives in the hands of the contemporary artist, not through incantation. Shaman initiates the process of creation with a word, a prompt. So, you know, in the way, if one wants to be mystic about it, there is a sense in which the magic of the word